Before we can talk about the unconditioned, we need to explore what we really mean by the conditioned. All right, so one of the ways that we could begin to look at that is look at nature and see how everything in nature is also conditioned. In other words, it has a certain form, a certain capacity, a certain way that it exists in the world. So, for example, a deer, over the millennia has evolved to be able to run fast, to have a color that allows it to hide in the woods, to have a very keen sense of hearing, to keep an eye out for predators. And so this is all sort of a genetic built-in form of conditioning that deer are born with. They came into the world with that set of, you could say, genetic or physical conditioning. There's also, we keep chickens here, and we get them as day-old chicks. They're shipped in the mail. They've never met their mother or an adult chicken when they get here, and we've raised them. And we had the experience of when we first put them outdoors, they're alert, and if a crow flew over, there was no reaction at all, or any other kind of bird, except if a hawk flew over. Even if it was 1,000 feet up in the air, they were terrified and ran for cover. Now that, to my way of thinking, isn't genetic conditioning, but there's some sort of cellular memory that is passed down from generation to generation to be able to have that knowledge, that built-in instinct, with no one to teach them how to do that. So with it seems like in nature, even plants also, trees are conditioned to grow well in a certain climate that they're growing in, a certain kind of soil. They're conditioned to seek the sun, to be able to extract minerals from the earth and so on. So this is all sort of conditioning that the natural world seems to come into this lifetime with that already built in. Humans have that also, of course, in terms of our appearance, coming through genetics, and maybe also in some ways like the chickens, coming through sort of a cellular memory of past experiences that may play a role in how we respond to the environment. But humans are also quite different in the sense that I would say most of their conditioning is accumulated during this lifetime rather than built in from the get-go. And this conditioning is not all bad. We've all been conditioned at an early age to walk and talk and write and type with our thumbs and all of that. And so that's all useful conditioning. And generally there's not a problem with any of that. And so for adults, it's usually a mixed bag, that we have, probably a majority of our conditioning works reasonably well. We're happy with it. And then there's often certain aspects of our conditioning that we feel are somehow not serving us well. Unskillful behavior, dysfunctional conditioning, however you want to call it. And so that's the kind of conditioning that causes suffering, both for ourselves and often those around us as well. So that's the kind of conditioning that's worth looking at and investigating at. And when that conditioning is inappropriate to our situation or our surroundings or who we're talking to, The body has a way of informing us often if we're at all sensitive to it. There's a sense of, if we're talking to somebody and we say something that's, really not considerate or kind, or in many other ways we can do that. We can feel the disconnection with the other person. We can feel it physically. And this is just the way the body has of informing us to, pay attention. This is something worth paying attention to. So the body's good that way to direct our attention to what needs to be looked at more closely. So the thing about the unconditioned is that we can't actually seek it directly. And probably the primary reason for that is that any motivation to seek the unconditioned is driven by some personal ambition, spiritual. I've heard about the unconditioned. That sounds like what I want. I'm going to go in to seek for it, right? For whose benefit? Right? Me. Of course, so we can't seek the unconditioned directly, but we can see what pulls us out of that. See what pulls us into this sense of conditioned self. And so, for humans, this conditioning during this lifetime happens in a very sort of random way that, all depending on, which family you happen to be born into, culture, religion, economic situation, education, opportunity, country, and so on. And so all of that contributes. And, at a young age, we don't sort of have the discernment to sort of decide to, absorb this conditioning, but not that, because all of the conditioning that went before contributes to our ability to, and our decision making about which way we want to go and what experiences we choose to expose ourselves to, and then those experiences create more memories, which are the basis of more opinions about how life works, etc. So all of that contributes, and then at some point in adulthood, we might become aware of how significant this patterning is. So conditioning, patterning, programming, basically all have the same meaning, right? How this body-mind was conditioned to operate in the world. And so, like I said, a lot of the conditioning may be useful, and then there's other kinds of conditioning that causes a disturbance. Right? So when we get into spirituality, it is easy to conclude that the way to become worthy of, let's say, spiritual awakening is to improve this, improve this body-mind. That's the ticket. And so we can set out on a road of sort of cleaning up this aspect of ourselves and changing our diet, and all of that's fine. But if the presumption is that sort of cleanup, repair work, fixing me, is a necessary prerequisite for awakening, that can cause us to spend lots of years in that pursuit, believing that only after fixing that, resolving all of these issues that we think are deficient in some way, that's all necessary in order to awaken. So it's just a self-imposed idea, belief. Once we have that belief, it's in a sense a part of our conditioned thought process, and we go about our life based on that presumption. So we can spend years, trying to meditate better, trying to not get angry so often, try to be more loving, more compassionate. And all of that is fine. It's good to be, to try to be more loving, of course. But if we believe that it's a necessary prerequisite for awakening, we've just erected a barrier that doesn't need to be there. And then live out the consequences. And it's sort of embarrassing, 10, 20, 30 years later, the awakening happens and we realize, actually, we didn't need to wait 10 or 20 or 30 years, And, except if that's how it happened, that's how it happened. But it's not, my point is that it's not necessary to fix anything to notice what you already are. So the reason that fixing the conditioned isn't relevant to awakening is that fixing the conditioning is, the conditioning is fully part of what we imagine our separate self to be, right? The little me, the self with a small s, what I take myself to be. So that's all part of that, our imagined identity. But the awakening is what wakes up from that belief. It wakes up from the belief that what I am is this conditioned separate self. It wakes up from the little me. The little me doesn't wake up to a better, improved me. The little me recognizes at some point that it never actually existed. All an idea, a concept that we've taken on. So that's the reason that it's fixing this isn't related to waking up. The waking up is recognizing that which is always present, already present, as is, that is just not subject to the world of form and therefore not subject to conditioning. It's just as it always is. This awake, spacious, you could say empty, alive presence, not subject to coming and going, not subject to change, always as is. What changes is everything else. Everything else that is part of the manifest world, including these body minds, including these thoughts and feelings and hopes and regrets and all of that, all part of the manifest world. And there's something else, as we pointed to in the initial meditation, there's something else that is aware of all of that, all of it, everything that we take ourselves to be. So that's the reason that it's not necessary to fix that conditioning in order to recognize what's always and already present. Because what's already present, this awareness, is patiently watching you struggle to try to get to the unconditioned by fixing and fiddling with the conditioning. When what we seek is already present and immediately available, not distant in any sense at all, the most intimate aspect of ourselves, that which is watching, present for whatever's happening. I'm not talking about physical eyes. I'm talking about just that capacity to be knowingly present for whatever sensation or thought or feeling or memory may be happening. So even though we can't seek the unconditioned directly, because that would just be more egoic striving, what we can do is see the conditioning that pulls us out of that knowingness. And if we can see it because it's that conditioning that causes us discomfort. And so how to work with that? And the thing is, if we try to fix that, it's actually coming from a place of opposition. Like, I know this is what I am, and I have this thought that I don't like that, and I want it to go away. So immediately we have two opposing things happening within what we take ourselves to be, the conditioning and the idea firmly held that that shouldn't be happening. And that conflict actually cements the conditioning in place, to the point that for most people, it's like, well, I guess that's who I am. It's been there. I've tried to change it, and it seems like it's just who I am. What can I do? I guess I just have to tough it out for the duration. So that doesn't work. Being opposed to it energizes it. Being opposed to it is that attention, that energy of opposition is energy. So we're energizing the very conditioning that we're trying to get past. So what's the alternative? The alternative is just to get more and more understanding about how that particular dysfunctional conditioning operates, to be willing to watch it in action. When it gets triggered, what it does, what its underlying sort of supportive beliefs are, how it responds to other people, how it plays out, how we regret our actions afterwards, all of that, the degree to which we suffer and the other people suffer, just seeing the whole picture. And here's the important part, seeing the whole picture without self-judgment. Self-judgment isn't appropriate, and it doesn't work. It's not appropriate because the conditioning that you took on was taken on in innocence in childhood, most of it. You didn't consciously take it on. It was just happening. It was part of life as you were growing up. So there's no blame here. It's just how this particular body-mind was conditioned. And all of us got a full dose of it. And it's really shocking when we see the extent of it. But it's really important to see that it's not, there's no blame. It was taken on in innocence. So that's the first thing. The second thing is if we are engaged in self-judgment about it every time it happens, then we sort of muddle up our opportunity to really watch it. It feels like the responsible thing to do. Like, okay, I'm the adult here. I'm willing to try to fix this, right? But if we're in the middle of it, trying to fix it, or trying to ignore it, or trying to explain it away, all of those are strategies to really distance ourselves from actually seeing what's going on. So being willing to just watch how it all unfolds, and what the fundamental beliefs are based on, without trying to justify it and blame or running away from it. None of that. Just be with the facts. Without trying to change it. That's the important part. Just see the mechanics of it. That we can do. And over time, the more we understand it, the less control it has over our actions, right? If we don't understand what's going on, it will repeat. the more we understand it, the less, the less like a dog on a leash that we are. So that's just by remaining present with it. And then there's something about that willingness to be attentive without chasing and without running away, without being horrified and without justifying it, just to be present for it. There's something about that that is has a cleansing effect. It's not immediate. It may not be fun, but either we deal with it intentionally and take it all the way through, or we live with it for the rest of our life. I mean, those are the two choices. So the reason I'm talking about understanding this dysfunctional conditioning is that it has a certain power to it, just because it's part of our patterning, part of our programming, and so it can pull us into unconsciousness, and if it happens frequently enough, it can obscure what is already present. But the more that can be clarified, perhaps the easier it is to see that which is already present. It's not that one has to go before the other, but since we can't think our way to the unconditioned, what we can do is see all the ways that we are conditioned, so they lose their sticky force. And just keep an eye out for this awareness that is already present. It's not necessary to try to imagine it or chase it, but just be willing to consider the possibility that it is already present. We don't have to wait for the, that cosmic, mind-blowing experience, that we hope will happen sometime in the future. It doesn't require that kind of explosive event. It just requires that we are available, even for a moment when we let all our beliefs about how things work and who I am and who the world is and what God is about, all of that, we just set it all aside and just see what remains. Be available. And even after the unconditioned or the awakeness is seen, it doesn't mean that the conditioning disappears. It will still arise, perhaps less so. But the good news is that from the recognition that what we truly are is this awake, spacious being, looking at the conditioning, it may still be functioning, but we can no longer take it to be what we are. We can see it. It may still arise. It may still affect how this body-mind functions, but we can no longer believe that it is who I am. That's the difference. And by being able to look at it with some distance, it's much easier to look at, therefore much easier to see our way through.